Hello, Mr. Robert Shaw. For this assignment, I chose to talk about and analyze the movie The Great Dictator by Charlie Chaplin. So to give a little context before we dive into analyzing if it's a good historical text, we need some context, right? So this film is about, it's like a parodied version about what happened between the end of World War One till around the 1940 where this movie was released. It ends of the parodied version of the German annexation of Austria. The characters involved in this film, there's a lot, but oftentimes it's not named. So the named characters are Adenoid Hinkler, which is the parodied version of Adolf Hitler. Then there is Benito Napoli, which is the parodied version of Benito Mussolini. And then the main characters, other than Hinkler, is they are not named, but the person who gave the famous last speech, he is described as a Jewish barber who lives and has a shop in the ghetto, and he has a bunch of Jewish neighbors, one of which is a woman, and very important to the plot, right? The whole movie is set in Tamonia, which is the parodied version of Nazi Germany. And what happens in the timeline of this movie is it starts at the end of World War One, where the Jewish barber saves a pilot, and that's a big moment, and it comes back again of he isn't as discriminated, he isn't as persecuted in the ghetto because he has connections to this pilot. But then the pilot turns out to speak up against Hinkler, and so then he gets attacked, whatever, right? Then I skipped ahead a little bit. Then it goes from the end of World War One to around 1918. There's no specific time periods called out. Then it goes to the interwar period, and we watch the rise of Adenoid Hinkler. So we watch the start of World War II and the rise of this parodied Hitler. And we end off the movie between the 1938 to the 1940-ish era, when the movie was released, with watching the invasion of Austerlitz, which is the parodied version of the German annexation of Austria. So in that timeline, those correlate with real world events, not necessarily this Jewish barber slapsticky comedically saving a pilot, but the movie is a big parody of things that happen in real life. The movie parodies the end of World War One, the interwar period, and again the annexation of Austria. So that they're not called out to be exactly it's not oh, this is what happens, watch this documentary. It's it is a parody of what happens, right? And so the historical events that it is parodying, it is very important, right? You're basically watching the rise of Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, which is a big deal, right? We've spent a whole unit, a couple months learning about this, basically, right? And this has a lot of real world big impacts, short term and long term. Hundreds of thousands of millions of people died because of this, and it's a lot of the death and destruction, short term, the beginning of the movie led to World War II, short term sure just led to World War II, but the consequences long term, horrible. It caused the Holocaust, the Cold War, dropping of atomic bombs. It also long term led to the UN and NATO and all of that stuff. It just it had a lot of big long-term impacts, and like we get like this movie like shows you like the start of it. So it's a very important, it portrays a very important historical like event, not necessarily one, but like a time frame of a historical event, but it parodies it. So it doesn't show you exactly what happens, but it like simplifies it to you so you can watch it in like a comedic, like light, more available context. This consequently helps me transition to the next point I want to talk about, which is to assess whether or not this is a good historical document. So when I say historical document, what do we mean by this? It is, well, it's in the name. It's a document about something that happened historically, right? And so when we like assess if it's a good document, if it's a good historical document, what we mean by this, well, what I mean by this, the criteria in which I am using to analyze if it is a good historical document is basically the accuracy of it and like the context surrounding it. So to further clarify on my first point of criteria is like the accuracy of this historical document, right? So we have to keep in mind that this is a movie, right? This, like, overall, this is first and foremost a movie. The thing is, movies have a purpose. They have something they want to impose onto you. They want you to see what they're trying to send, like a message. So the purpose of this movie is to, like, it is to inform the viewer of things going on in the world at the time, right? To reiterate, this movie came out and was produced in 1940. Like during the era, basically, right? And so when we talk about accuracy, what do we mean by accuracy, right? We like, when people think of accuracy, usually you think like timeline, it is correct, it is factual, right? This movie is a parody. Nothing in it is explicitly factual, right? Like the main character, his name isn't Hitler. It is like, it's Heinkel, right? So it's a parody. So when you're talking about accuracy, it's not, none of it is accurate. It's not factual. But if you have to read between the lines, you have to like actually use critical like sense to make it accurate. And it is very on the nose. It's not like you can't tell it's not a parody. It's not like you have to like, oh, gotta get my textbook and my like magnifying glass to make sure to like see what they mean by this. It is very on the nose, right? And so like if you translate what they mean by the parody into real world, it is like, it does follow a sequence of events, but like it's still a movie at the end of the day. A benefit of the movie is to inform like the viewer of like real world events, but before anything, they need that cash, bro. They need to be making like money to put it out into theaters. People want to go watch it. They want to go and like have a good time at the movie, have a good laugh. And so it's still a movie meant to entertain. It is first foremost to entertain, then as like they also hope to aim to inform people. So the whole movie is very slapstick comedy. It's very like, ooh, very, very of the era. It is not based in like accuracy. It's not based in like real world effects, right? It is very kind of like cartoony. A lot of things that happen, we could see happen in Looney Tunes. In addition, we also have to keep in mind when this movie was produced. It was in 1940s. Like, people didn't know fully the consequences that were going to come about World War II, right? Like, a lot of this movie is very much based in like the reality of the time. It's not very foreseeing the future, right? It's a commentary of what is happening now, not like an afterwards, like looking back in hindsight. Like later on, Charlie Chaplin came out and like said that like if he knew like the full consequences of the Holocaust, he probably wasn't gonna make the movie. So does this movie like fill the first criteria I set of being accurate? Would I say this movie is accurate? I would say no. Because if you showed this movie to a toddler, they wouldn't necessarily understand the things that actually happen in real life. Like if you showed a little child this, they would come out thinking like, oh, this historical event was Hinkler, Arnold Hinkler, doing these silly things comedically, which it's still accurate in the sense of it's like showing the times, but it's a parody and it's not exactly what happened. It's not exactly factual. Like the famous ending speech didn't happen in real life. There wasn't a like Jewish barber that looked exactly like Hitler that went up and gave like a big speech condemning Hitler and like fascist mentality and Nazis. That never happened. It is a commentary. It is not like a step-by-step thing that happened in like real life, right? So I wouldn't say that it's accurate to real life. Like I would argue for my second point, like for the second part of my criteria, that it would like kind of be like it would fall under like contextual integrity, but I'll get there. I would also like to reiterate the fact that I like to like further explain why I do not think it's accurate. It underrepresents like the effects, the real life effects that happened because of the things that happened in the movie. Like the main character lived in a ghetto, and it's like a lot of the movie severely like underrepresents the danger that you would actually be experiencing in like the times living there, right? They first prioritize it being a movie and being like not like tragic by watching like genuinely how like dangerous it was living like in the ghettos where the main character lives, or like just like being someone living at the times. It is like severely underrepresented, because like they didn't really necessarily know 100% like the consequences of how things were actually like until like later on. And like it's like a movie. It's a movie, and like you can't show an audience atrocities with it still being a comedy that's slapstick, that's fun to watch as a family. That is a Charlie Chaplin movie. While this movie may not fit my first layer of criteria of it being accurate, I have another layer of criteria that it needs to fulfill to be a good historical document. This second point of criteria I have categorized as contextual integrity. So when I say contextual integrity, what do I mean? Well, I mean things that aren't necessarily categorized under accuracy. So this is a movie, this is a text, right? This is something to show life, right? When we analyze documents, there's a lot of things that we have to look at to like guarantee it is something that we want to read in order to learn something, right? So I would say it has good like contextual integrity because like it's a primary document. Sure, he wasn't Hitler himself, but he was living in the time. He lived through World War II. He was there, and the commentary he has is his own opinions through being there. The movie has a lot of like contextual like built up, like it is built on a foundation that is built of the times. So if I were to build a movie now in the same like to cover the same things that like this movie did, The Great Dictator, it would be very different because we have different starting points. Their starting point is living through World War II. Mine is taking this class and knowing what I do about World War II through you're like what Mr. Robert Shaw has taught me, right? If you live in the times as a primary like person there, just living through the times, you will have your like the context will be better, right? You will have more to say that is accurate because you lived through it. And what I have like hammered in at this point is that this movie is a parody, right? So while because it's a parody, it's not necessarily factually accurate, it is contextually accurate, right? Like, sure, the movie isn't about Hitler, but it's about Hitler, right? The context, what like a good like an actual viewer watching it like would like immediately understand that it's just a parody, and then you're able to act and like gain knowledge from it knowing that it is a parody, and you're able to like disconnect from like and not necessarily be real because you know it's a parody, and you're able to get like context and like fill in your own opinion and like gain things because it's a parody. You stop wondering like, oh, did this actually happen, or is like the movie trying to like tell me something? You know it's not what actually happened. You know they're like that Charlie Chaplin's trying to tell you something with each scene. So you're able to skip that line of like, oh, did this actually happen? And like know immediately that you're trying to be told something. And this movie, The Great Dictator, is very reflective of the beliefs of the people living there, right? Again, this is a primary document. This movie like is trying to tell you something. It is trying to like instill upon you the beliefs of the filmmakers who lived through this time. It's trying to instill on you their opinion of what is happening, right? It is very symbolic. It is trying to sell you on the idea that fascism is bad, that Hitler should not be doing the things he's doing, and that Nazis shouldn't be following Hitler's lead, that as humans, we should have compassion, that we're not necessarily evil, that we just need to like stand up against people who are evil and trying to like force you to do things that are evil. As a result of the things I've been talking about, this movie holds a lot of integrity surrounding the context, right? The context surrounding this movie is also the context surrounding the events happening in the movie, right? It is very parallel. This movie was made during Hitler's rule, during like his time in power, and so when the producers are making the movie, they are presenting events that happened in their lifetime. It is like the context of the movie is the context of the event it's trying to parody. So now, coming back to the idea of whether or not this is a good historical document, let's look at my criteria. My criteria was if it was accurate and if it was contextually integral. I said that it wasn't, and then it was. So what do we do now? So I would like to suggest something more. I'd like to point out that this is a movie, that this is this is media made for the people to watch. And we have to think about why historical documents exist, right? What is the point of a historical document? Is it to entertain people, or is it to gain knowledge from? Because if it is to entertain people, this movie does it wonderfully. Well, maybe not in this area, but definitely at the time, it was very thrilling, it was entertaining, it was peak movie, right? And so, yes, they did first say a lot of accuracy for the sake of entertainment, but that's just what a movie is, right? It's not necessarily, if you're going to the movie at the time to watch this movie, you're not watching it oh, I can't wait to learn about Hitler. You're going oh, I can't wait to watch this Charlie Chaplin movie. So when you are reading a historical document, if you're reading it or watching it or gaining from it in order to be entertained, then this is perfect historical document, right? maybe not perfect, but this is a really good historical document to watch. On the other hand, if the point of a historical document is to learn and to get factual knowledge from this document, this is not it. This is clearly a film meant to entertain you, so you gain something from it, and hopefully you gain information from it, right? But like a historical document that you're reading to gain knowledge, it's not good for that. Like, again, if you are a toddler, this is being firstly introduced to Hitler, and you're watching this, you're not gonna know, like, oh yes, he was playing, like, that guy giving a speech was like, oh, good commentary. You baby would not know that. You as a baby would think like, oh yeah, that Jewish barber, wow, I wonder what his genuine name was. Oh, I wonder what happened to him after that speech. So, what I believe the reason is for people watching historical documents is to gain things, right? It's to gain knowledge, not to gain entertainment, but to gain knowledge, right? If you wanted to be entertained, most people would just put on like a Marvel movie, not necessarily like a World War II movie. So to me, a historical document is a document like accurately and accurately depicting like a historical event, so the reader can gain the information of said historical event. This means that to me, this movie has failed to meet the criteria that I have developed. It has failed to be considered a good historical document, because to be a good historical document, you have to give them what they want to gain. And what people gain from watching this movie is watching a comedic parody of an event, or like a sequence of events of World War II. So the people who are watching this historical document, they're not learning new information, they're learning new commentary. They're learning about the opinions of the people of the times, not necessarily factual events that happen chronologically. And so while people can gain like positive things from watching this movie, you are not gaining accurate factual things from this movie. And I believe that as a historical document, that is your main purpose. Your main purpose is to inform people of genuine facts rather than giving them entertainment, which you can do at the same time, but this movie specifically did not. Thank you for watching.